All right, what's up, guys? It's Aztec 101 in the ring. I want to talk about Jermall Charlo. He was on the Boxing Boys. He did an interview. I'm sure you guys have seen it. If you haven't, go check it out. It's one of the most recent interviews. It happened just a few days ago. And Jermall Charlo is one of the Charlo brothers that moved up from 154. He's now at 160. And he's shown interest before in Canelo and Triple G, right? In this interview, he mentions them again, says that he's willing to travel anywhere and make that fight happen. And he also brought up Billy Joe Saunders. Well, he was asked about Billy Joe Saunders, but he said he was willing to fight Billy Joe. Jermall Charlo, at this point, he's a fun fight. Mix and match him however you want to. You can put him up against David Lemieux. You can put him up against Canelo. You can put him up against Triple G, Billy Joe Saunders, right? Daniel Jacobs, all these guys. And they're fun fights, right? I really want to see Canelo versus Jermall Charlo. I would really like to see that fight. But in order for that fight to happen, Jermall Charlo will have to move up the line. Because at this point, he's standing behind, Billy Joe Saunders and Daniel Jacobs. And there's no way he can cut in front of them just being a number one contender for the WBC. Right? Now, I know... I think it was Ronnie Shields. I think he's working with Ronnie Shields. I heard Ronnie Shields talking about how he believes that both fighters, Triple G and Canelo, will vacate the WBC. It's expected that Canelo will vacate the WBC because him and the CEO of the WBC aren't seeing eye to eye. So there's a good chance Canelo won't have that title. But Triple G, on the other hand, if he wins, he'll keep that title. Ronnie Shields believes that he'll drop it, right, to avoid Jermall Charlo, I guess. I really want to see these fights. And the only way that this could happen is Jermall Charlo has to become irresistible, unavoidable, right? How do you do that? Well, you can't do it fighting once a year. Jermall Charlo just does not have the fan base to be able to maintain the fan base throughout the entire year based on one fight. People are going to lose interest. You know what I mean? They're looking at other fighters. They're following, the NFL season, Super Bowl. They're looking at the NBA draft. You got the World Series coming up. All this shit, World Cup. There's just too much going on for you to step away for a year and not fight, or fighting twice a year. Even that's walking a fine line. Canelo has fought more times in the past 3 years than Jermall Charlo, right? They're the same age. Jermall Charlo is not getting paid as much as Canelo. There is no reason why Jermall Charlo should be taking a break. He should not be letting his foot off the gas at this point of his career. There's too much on the line, and there's too many other fighters that are doing more than he is. If he really wants to have this fight, which is a fight I would love to see, and I'm sure other boxing fans would want to see, either Jermall Charlo versus Canelo or versus Triple G. But in order for him to actually demand these fights, he doesn't have to chase for them. He really doesn't. There's a very simple way for you to build a fan base. And that's by staying active. That's the best way. It's been proven. They've been doing this for 100 years. All right? The fighters that stay active, that stay in front of the fans, are the fighters that are going to be mentioned while you're not fighting. They're the ones that the media is going to talk about. They're the ones that the fans are going to speculate what your next fight is, what the next move is. And if people aren't interested, They're not speculating. They're not talking about you. It's out of sight, out of mind. You got to start over the next year. That's something that I noticed with Keith Thurman. He suffered through the Mayweather era, but a lot of it also had to do with the fact that he was just not active enough, right? And there was just a big situation where the fights that were in front of him, since a lot of the fighters that were big names were with Al Heyman, he did not get the names that he needed at the right time. So that way, when it came down to him being the number one contender for the WBA title that Floyd was holding, he couldn't demand the fight. You know, Andre Berto was able to stand in front of him. Andre Berto cut in front. Why? Because more people know Berto than they know Keith Thurman. And that's not saying much, because Berto is relatively unknown. So the fact that he was able to pull this off shows me that, you know, Keith Thurman, the ball was dropped. It was either by Keith Thurman's choice or it has to do with his management. And one thing I'm noticing is a lot of these fighters with Al Heyman, they're not fighting as often as they should. So I don't think it's Keith Thurman. I don't think it's Jermall Charlo or Jermall or Lara, you know, or Errol Spence. Errol Spence actually remains pretty active, right? He's probably one of the more active fighters that's under PBC or Al Heyman. You know, and Jermall Charlo is just not following in those footsteps. He's not staying active enough. And it'd be nice if he can put in a 2-fight winning streak this year. By 2019, I think, he can either get the Billy Joe Saunders fight, Triple G fight, Canelo fight. He can take on a winner. He can take on the loser. These big money fights don't just fall out of the sky. You know what I mean? It's not a fucking lottery. It's not. There's an example and a blueprint already set up. And you know, if you're just not working as hard as the person in front of you, you can't demand the same perks and the same pay. You know? He's got an example. He's got someone that's his age, and Canelo Alvarez, that is, he's under Golden Boy, right? Not everything is handed to him just because he's under Golden Boy. A lot of things they're strategic. Sometimes he has to chase fights. He chased Cotto for 2 years, 3 years before he was able to get that fight, right? But he chased the fights that he wanted. I need to see that same fire coming out of Jermall Charlo. I mean, he can't just sit back and wait and think that being a number one contender, he can bark from a distance and call out Canelo and think that's going to do something. Because at the end of the day, Jermall Charlo has the potential to become a $15 million fighter. He can make these big paydays on his own without Canelo, right? So that way when he does meet up with Canelo, he gets his money's worth. He actually gets paid on an even playing field with Canelo rather than having Canelo take the majority of the profits in a big fight, you know? Jermall Charlo, let's say he's used to making $1 million a fight. You know, what's the point of fighting Canelo if you're going to max out on maybe 2 or 3 million, right? In a $30 million fight. Might as well try to hit as close to the 50-50 as you can, right? The only way you can do that is by fighting and staying active. Canelo has done much more legwork than Jermall Charlo, and that's why you're seeing Canelo's career take off. Jermall Charlo has to start. The resources are there. You're without Heyman. The majority of fighters that people are excited about are without Heyman right now. especially in the division at 154 and 160. You have a few fighters that are around you. You have Daniel Jacobs. That's a fight you can easily make. Because at this point, Canelo and Triple G, that's already made. That's set in stone. That's gonna happen, right? So don't be left with your, don't be left with your hopes up. Don't get your hopes up, waiting to see if, you being the next in line to a title is good enough. When you got guys like Billy Joe Saunders, who is a big draw in the UK, and you have Daniel Jacobs, who's, he's probably the same type of draw that Jermall Charlo is. There would be no difference in the draw in the figures. There would actually be, it would actually be more dangerous to take on Daniel Jacobs than it would be to take on Jermall Charlo, because Jacobs is a natural 160 pounder. And you can argue and say that so is Jermall Charlo. He was just fighting in a division that was too small for him, which is why he moved up. But yeah, there's just too many people around you for you to really make a name for yourself. You can't sit back and wait, fight once a year. I think eventually reality has to strike, and these fighters are going to have to come out and start fighting and stop talking, right? It's one of those things in sales. You got to learn when to shut up, and these guys got to learn when to shut up and when to start fighting. Just put up the fights. Get those names on your record. Jermall Charlo was at 160. Why wasn't there a unification for the WBA title with Erislandy Lara? If you really want to demand the Canelo fight Lara. That would have been a great name to have for your record. I'm not saying fight Lara to avoid Canelo. I'm saying fight Lara to prove, like, yo, I'm chasing you. I'm fighting the same motherfuckers that you're fighting, and maybe I'm beating them better than you are, or whatever the case may be, but fucking try to do something. It would be a great fight. Honestly, it'd be a great fight. And to be honest, if the fight doesn't happen and the excuse is that Jermall Charlo isn't a draw, at the end of the day, with all the resources that you have Al Heyman. You have a stock of fighters that have signed to Al Heyman. Al Heyman pretty much can give you a fucking phone book and be like, fucking pick someone. Just pick someone. Pick a name. I'll make the fight. If that's the case, then do what you have to do. But there shouldn't be any excuses on why you're not a draw. Not with the resources that you have. Fighters have done more with less. So, at this point of Jermall Charlo's career, his resume does not reflect his talent or his potential. And he's, he was saying that Canelo isn't getting any younger. Well, Jermall Charlo, you're older than Canelo, bro. Like, you're not getting any younger either, man. And you're not really taking advantage of the youth that you have. This is really the time when you should be putting in 2-3 fights a year. Period. There's no reason why Triple G, a 30-year-old, is fighting more often than you are. How the fuck is this older fool outworking you? So at the end of the day, I start wondering, like, who's really hungry? Like, who's just talking and who's hungry? And the fight would be exciting. I hope the fight happens, and if it does, I would think that if it's done right, Jermall Charlo gets his shit together, you can make this fight by 2019, at least with Billy Joe Saunders, the winner of Canelo versus Triple G, or even the loser. But you have to fucking fight. What do you guys think? It's Aztec 101 in the ring, and I'm out.